Hey YouTube, Mr. Slush here. A happy weekend and Sunday to you. Wanted to bring you along out into the garden. I want to cover a somewhat controversial topic, and that topic is weeds. The pioneer species in any landscape, and so many gardeners I watch are so meticulous about pulling every single weed out of their landscape and just having a really nice tidy lawn where everything that is growing is what they've put into it. As you can see, my property, I have Bermuda grass throughout the entire landscape, and it's something that I've allowed to grow, and it's been very beneficial in my landscape here. I mulched this entire 2-acre property about 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, and it took a lot of mulch, and the entire property was covered, and I went very deep in certain areas, 8 inches, sometimes a foot, and I sheet mulched. I put plastic paper down and mulched on top of it, and the Bermuda grass still came through. And so instead of working against nature, I decided to work with nature, and my life has been so much happier. And I don't know about you, but there's one thing I hate more than anything else with gardening, and that is pulling weeds. And I've just come to appreciate all the native species, all the pioneer species that come up in my landscape, and they serve many purposes. First and foremost, many of these species provide nutrients. When I come through, especially during the summer months when we get a lot of rain, I come through and I usually have to mow my entire 2-acre property about 4 or 5 times, and I just mulch out all the grass, which goes down and just feeds the soil, and it just acts as a mulch. And so not only is the Bermuda grass, which is now turning yellow, but it's really vibrant green in the summer months, but not only is it a living mulch, it's being chopped down, so it's a chop and drop, and it's feeding all these various trees. And not only is it providing nutrients through the chop and drop method, but it provides shade. It provides shade for the soil. As you can see, this Meyer lemon here, not only does this Bermuda grass provide shade for the soil, it provides shade for the trunk. And so it's beneficial. And it's a living mulch. The entire yard's being mulched every year, and old grass is being put down, and it's feeding the soil. And another thing, here's a navel orange loaded with fruit. Another thing is it's a habitat. It's a habitat for life. If I go through, here's some lemongrass. If I go through, and sometimes I will on certain trees, if the grass is getting extremely tall, I'll go through and I'll just hand pull it around the trunk. Just make sure it's not overwhelming, especially if it's a younger tree. I'll maintain it. But if I go through this lemongrass and I look in there, I bet you there's all kinds of insects. And what are those insects doing? They're dying, they're excrementing, they're providing nutrients. It's a little loquat. And so all that's possible via these native species, these pioneers, these grasses. You know, Bill Mollison, one of the fathers of permaculture, had said in his handbook, which I own, that you shouldn't slash out all of the native pioneer species that come up in your landscape, but you should nurture them, because a lot of these native species are providing microclimates, they're providing nutrients, they're providing wind protection, and they help with the succession of the land. So when you first start plotting out your garden and you're working with nothing, this was all dirt. See this driveway here? I didn't mulch the driveway, but I mulched everything else. And as you can see, everything that was mulched is just full of life. And those roots are putting sugars into the ground, and they're promoting fungus and hyphae and mycorrhiza and all that good stuff. Is just, it's like a network, and I can go and I can dig up some of this mulch, and it's just covered. The wood chips that are under there are just white, like a spider web full of hyphae and mycorrhiza, and it's just it's feeding it. So Bill Mollison said to not take out the native species, the volunteers, the pioneers, but to nurture them and to allow them to work for you, which is exactly what I do here. I've got some nice figs. This is my fig row. And so it's a point of contention. You'll hear many gardeners say you have to take them out because the weeds are sucking up your nutrients and they're sucking up the water. I've never had that issue. When something needs water, it needs water, and so I water them. There's a Nanking cherry. There's a little strawberry tree. This guy I put in last year, very slow grower, but he's doing great. So water is necessary, and it's but with water, this grass, this Bermuda grass, this dreaded Bermuda grass I've got everywhere, you know what it does when we hit the dew point? It provides water, and not just a little bit. It provides a lot of moisture for the entire soil, the entire landscape, which not everything here gets watered. Only the various trees receive water. And so when we hit the dew point here, which was quite frequently later this year, we had a late monsoon, and I would walk out here and my shoes would just get wet. And so on that empty dirt driveway I just showed you, it was dry. And so the grass does a lot more work for you than not, and it provides so many more benefits than not. Here's an old hugelkultur mound going on 6 or 7 years now, and I've just let it collapse. It's just built the soil. I've got some perennial purple tree collards on it, and merit tree collards, and artichokes. So that's my 2 cents on weeds. I don't consider them weeds. Every weed has a purpose. You should look locally to see what the weeds are in your particular area. Every area has a different type of weed. I've got weeds here called purple nightshade, and unbelievably, these weeds that come up in my yard, they clean the toxins out of your soil. And they are poisonous plants. They produce little berries that are poisonous. The plants themselves are very thorny, but they provide an excellent work, and they serve an excellent purpose, and they clean the soil of any toxins. So anybody that was here previously that put whatever into the ground, any metal, heavy metals, anything like that, this weed comes and it cleans the soil for me. And I at first had it in abundance, but now not so much. Now I'm getting more of the perennials, the creosote, some of the other perennial plants here that they just want to perennialize now. So, and that's the succession of this property. It went from nothing into heavy weeds, now into a more perennialized setting, because I've just allowed it to do its thing. I would consider myself a natural farmer. I allow nature to take place and I work with it. There are a few weeds here I don't allow to grow, one being the goat head or goat thorn, and it is a medicinal plant and it produces some medicinal properties, but it also produces these thorns that my dogs get into their feet. So what I do with those, I do utilize them. I pull them out and I'll put them into my liquid jatum, my North Korean liquid compost, and then that way I take advantage of all the various nutrients that it provides, and then I can use that out in the garden. So I do make use of those. And so that's just my 2 cents on weeds. I don't see them as weeds, I see them as native plants. Everything's welcome to grow here. Not everything. We get some amaranth that when it comes up, it is edible, but when it comes up and you allow it to go into flower, and after it's dried and shriveled, it's pretty thorny. It's not so friendly, but I allow it to become mulch. Everything here that dies and falls to the ground becomes mulch, and it's a great plant. So I encourage as much mulch, as much organic matter as I can possibly get throughout the landscape. It's all benefit. I live in the Sonoran Desert, so we don't have tree services that go and tear down trees. You know, our trees here are pretty slim pickings. We have mesquites and palo verdes, and they're all thorny. And so to get mulch here is, you know, a pretty big thing. We don't have the chip drop, maybe in Phoenix, but not down here in Tucson. And so I make my own mulch. I do it organically. I allow nature to be the mulch, and I've got a chipper that I'll chip up, like this Mexican sunflower here that's in bloom. It'll be the last flower we see this fall, and it'll just be loaded with flowers. It's just starting to bud out now, so really neat plants. And all those, that's a dynamic accumulator. It has really deep tap roots that go down 4 to 6 feet, and it mines up all the nutrients from deep. And I'll chip that up, or I'll allow all those branches to fall down onto the ground and produce nice mulch for me. And all this, I don't know if you can see it, but all this dead ground cover here, it was in the springtime when we get our rains. There's some amaranth there. When we get our rains, this place turns into a jungle, and I just have to come out here with my trimmer and trim it and mow it and just knock it down. It's a big chop and drop, and it's a big means of fertilizing my landscape. And so it's 2 acres wide. You know, it takes me 3 days to get everything mowed and chopped and within means. There's some mullein I've got growing, really neat herb. They call it cowboy toilet paper because it's just so soft you could use it as toilet paper. And it flowers every 2 years. It'll have a big stalk come out of the center of it, and then I'll take those and I'll spread them out. I've got some new ones growing behind some of these Eleagnus back here. These are silverberries. I've got quite a few of these back here. I don't know if you can see that too great, but I've got quite a few of them back here. I've got so many plants on this side here, and they're all just together. There's a mulberry there. There's a lemon tree there. Got a couple more Eleagnus there, lemongrass. There's an ashwagandha plant, if you're familiar with that, with the roots. So anyways, this video is getting kind of long. I just wanted to ramble about native species and find out what they are in your area. See how they're beneficial. And if you're tired of weeding, see how you can work with your weeds versus against them. You'll be happy you did. God bless you. Take care.